The pounding of hooves echoed through the dawn-lit streets of Ouray, Colorado, as Penelope Grant clutched her meager belongings to her chest, tears streaming down her face. The year was 1878, and at 20 years old, she had just been forced onto a wagon headed east, away from the only home she'd ever known, by the very family that should have protected her. "You've brought nothing but shame to this family," her father had growled as he practically threw her onto the wagon. "No daughter of mine will marry an outlaw's son. You leave today and never return." Penelope's crime had been falling in love with the wrong man, according to her kin. Thomas Blackwell's father had been hanged for robbery 3 years prior, and despite Thomas's honest work at the local livery, the Grants couldn't stomach the connection. When they'd discovered Penelope's secret courtship, her fate was sealed before sunrise. The wagon lurched forward under the guidance of her stone-faced brother Jeremiah, who had been tasked with seeing her to the stage-coach station in Montrose. From there, she would be sent to distant relatives in Missouri, people she'd never met, who had reluctantly agreed to take her in. "Please, Jeremiah," Penelope begged, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't right. I've done nothing wrong." Her brother stared straight ahead, his jaw set firmly. "Father's word is law, Penny, you know that." As the wagon rumbled past the edge of town, the golden rays of sunrise illuminated the majestic San Juan Mountains. Penelope took one last look at Ouray, the mining town nestled in the valley that had been her home for 5 years, since the family had moved west, seeking prosperity after the war. They had traveled less than 3 miles along the winding mountain road when the sound of galloping hooves approached from behind. Jeremiah cursed under his breath and reached for the rifle tucked beside him. "Stop the wagon," a deep voice commanded. Penelope's heart leapt at the familiar voice. Through her tears, she saw a figure on horseback overtaking them, dust billowing around horse and rider. Nathan Hunt pulled his chestnut stallion alongside the wagon, his face determined beneath his wide-brimmed hat. The 26-year-old cowboy worked the Thornhill Ranch outside town, and though they'd shared only fleeting conversations at the general store and church socials, his presence now was unexpected. "This doesn't concern you, Hunt," Jeremiah called out, slowing the wagon but keeping a firm grip on the reins. "Family business." Nathan's eyes found Penelope's tear-stained face. "Miss Grant, are you leaving of your own free will?" Before she could answer, Jeremiah cut in. "She's going to relatives in Missouri. Now ride on and leave us be." Nathan guided his horse directly in front of the wagon, forcing Jeremiah to pull the horses to a complete stop. In one fluid motion, he dismounted and stood beside the wagon, looking up at Penelope. "I heard what happened at first light," Nathan said, his voice softer now. "Word travels fast in a town like Ouray." Penelope wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "My father has forbidden me to stay." Nathan's gaze was steady, his blue eyes piercing in the morning light. "Stay here with me," he said, extending his hand toward her. "I can't stand by and watch them ship you off like unwanted cargo." Jeremiah rose to his feet, rifle now in hand. "Are you out of your mind, Hunt? She's betrothed to our cousin's neighbor in Missouri. It's all arranged." "Arranged without my consent," Penelope said, finding her voice at last. "I'm not a parcel to be mailed away." Nathan didn't flinch at the sight of the rifle. "Put that down, Jeremiah. We both know you won't use it." "You have no right," Jeremiah began. "She has the right," Nathan interrupted. "She's of age. She can make her own choice." His eyes never left Penelope's. "I'm offering you a choice, Miss Grant, right here, right now." Penelope's mind raced. She barely knew Nathan Hunt beyond polite greetings and the occasional dance at town gatherings. Yet here he was, risking her brother's wrath to offer her an alternative to exile. "Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Nathan's expression softened. Because I've watched you from afar for months now. Your kindness to the Miller children after they lost their mother. Your determination teaching at the Sunday school despite your father's disapproval. No one should be forced from their home for following their heart. Jeremiah lowered his rifle slightly. Father will never forgive this. Perhaps not, Nathan acknowledged. But I'm offering Miss Grant sanctuary at the Thornhill Ranch until she decides what she truly wants. And if I choose to stay, Penelope asked, then I'll help you build a life here. No strings attached, Nathan promised, but it's your choice. Not your father's, not your brother's, and not mine. The mountains seemed to hold their breath as Penelope considered her options. Missouri meant a life dictated by others, married off to a stranger. Staying meant defying her family, perhaps forever. I'll stay, she whispered, then more firmly, I'll stay. Before Jeremiah could react, Nathan helped her down from the wagon, her single carpet bag of possessions clutched in her hand. Penny, think about what you're doing, Jeremiah warned, his anger mingled with genuine concern. Father will disown you completely. Penelope stood straighter, drawing strength from the decision. He already has, Jeremiah. Tell him I'm sorry it came to this, but I won't be shipped off like cattle. Nathan assisted her onto his horse, then mounted behind her. I'll see that she's safe, Jeremiah. You have my word. As they rode away, Penelope heard her brother call out once more, You'll regret this, Penny. But his voice faded as Nathan guided his horse onto a trail leading into the hills above Ouray. The ranch is about 5 miles north, Nathan explained as they rode. Mrs. Thornhill, the owner's widow, will welcome another woman on the property. She's been looking for help with the house since her daughter married last year. Penelope nodded, trying to process the drastic turn her life had taken in the span of a single hour. Why did you really come after me, Mr. Hunt? The truth, please. Nathan was silent for a moment, the only sound the steady rhythm of hoofbeats on the packed earth. When I heard the Grants were forcing their daughter to leave at dawn, something didn't sit right. I've seen too many people in these mountains have their choices taken away. Minors forced into company contracts. Women married off for convenience. I couldn't ride past your father's house this morning and not act. You were watching our house. I was delivering a message to your neighbor, the blacksmith. Saw the commotion, heard enough to piece together what was happening. Penelope turned slightly to look at his face. And you decided to intervene just like that. For a woman you barely know, a small smile touched his lips. Sometimes a man just knows when something isn't right, Miss Grant, and sending you away against your will wasn't right. As they crested a hill, Penelope gasped at the view that unfolded before her. The Thornhill Ranch spread across a valley, with a large 2-story house, several outbuildings and grazing pastures where cattle dotted the landscape. Morning mist was just burning off the valley floor, giving the scene an almost dreamlike quality. It's beautiful, she murmured. It's home, Nathan replied simply. And for now, it can be yours too. As they approached the ranch, a woman emerged from the main house, shading her eyes against the rising sun. Clara Thornhill was in her 50s, her once blonde hair now streaked with gray, but she stood tall and commanding on the porch. Nathan Hunt, who have you brought to my doorstep at this hour? She called out as they dismounted. Nathan helped Penelope down before answering. Mrs. Thornhill, this is Miss Penelope Grant from town. She's in need of safe haven, and I thought of your offer to hire help for the house. Clara's shrewd eyes assessed Penelope from head to toe. Grant, the storekeeper's daughter. Penelope nodded, suddenly aware of her tear-stained face and rumpled traveling clothes. Yes, madam. She was being forced to leave town by her family, Nathan explained. I intercepted them on the road. Clara's expression softened slightly. "Well, girl, do you know how to cook?" "Yes, madam." "And sew and keep house," Penelope answered quickly. "Can you read, write, cipher?" "I attended school in Denver before we moved to Ouray. I've been helping teach the younger children at Sunday school." Clara nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good. I need someone with sense around here. Too many cowboys and not enough civilization." She gestured toward the house. "Come inside. We'll get you settled while Nathan tends to his horse." As Nathan led his stallion toward the stables, Clara guided Penelope into the house. The interior was surprisingly refined for a ranch house, with polished wood floors, a large stone fireplace, and furniture that spoke of Eastern taste. "My late husband built this place to my specifications," Clara explained, noting Penelope's admiring gaze. "Said if I was to follow him to this wilderness, I deserved a proper home." She showed Penelope to a small but comfortable bedroom on the second floor. "This was my daughter Eleanor's room before she married and moved to Denver. You can stay here for now." Penelope set her carpet bag on the bed, overwhelmed by the morning's events. "I'm grateful for your kindness, Mrs. Thornhill. I can pay my way with work." Clara studied her with those penetrating eyes. "Nathan doesn't make a habit of rescuing young women. What's your story, truly?" Penelope took a deep breath and explained about Thomas Blackwell, her father's ultimatum, and the arranged marriage waiting in Missouri. Clara listened without interruption. "So you weren't in love with this Blackwell boy?" Clara asked when Penelope finished. "I cared for him, but—" "No, not love," Penelope admitted. "I think I was more drawn to the idea of choosing for myself than to Thomas himself." Clara nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "And now Nathan Hunt has given you that choice. Interesting." She moved toward the door. "Rest a bit, then come down to the kitchen. We'll need to feed the men at noon, and you might as well start earning your keep right away." After Clara left, Penelope sank onto the bed, the reality of her situation finally hitting her full force. She had defied her family, accepted help from a near stranger, and now found herself at a cattle ranch miles from town with no clear plan for her future. Yet beneath her anxiety, a strange sense of liberation was growing. For the first time in her life, Penelope Grant had made a choice solely for herself. Downstairs, Nathan was washing up at the pump outside the kitchen when Clara approached him. "That girl isn't just any town girl, is she?" Clara asked without preamble. "You've had your eye on her." Nathan dried his hands on a towel. "I've admired her from a distance, yes, but that's not why I brought her here." "Isn't it?" Clara raised an eyebrow. "In the 3 years you've worked this ranch, I've never seen you act impulsively. Yet today you intercept a family matter and bring home a young woman." "It wasn't right, what they were doing," Nathan insisted. "Forcing her away like that." Clara's stern expression softened. "No, it wasn't right, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have done it. Just be honest with yourself about why you did." Before Nathan could respond, one of the ranch hands called for him from the corral, and Clara turned back toward the house, leaving him with thoughts he wasn't quite ready to examine. Inside, Penelope stood at the window of her new room, watching Nathan cross the yard toward the corral. The cowboy who had changed the course of her life in a single bold moment was now going about his daily work as if he hadn't just turned his own life upside down as well. For whether he realized it or not, by saying those words, "Stay here with me," Nathan Hunt had set them both on a path neither could have anticipated when the sun rose that morning over the mountains of Ouray. The first days at Thornhill Ranch passed in a whirlwind of activity as Penelope adjusted to her new life. Clara Thornhill proved to be a fair but exacting employer, expecting Penelope to earn her keep through hard work in the kitchen, laundry, and general housekeeping. "No charity in my house," Clara had declared on Penelope's first full day. You'll work same as everyone else. And work she did. Penelope rose before dawn each morning to help prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, 8 men including Nathan, who managed the cattle operation. The days were filled with endless chores, from churning butter to mending shirts, tasks not unlike those she'd performed at home but now done for strangers rather than family. Nathan maintained a respectful distance, their interactions limited to brief exchanges at mealtimes or passing greetings when their paths crossed in the yard. Yet Penelope often felt his eyes following her, a gentle watchfulness that somehow never felt intrusive. On her 4th evening at the ranch, Penelope was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when Nathan approached, leading his horse after a day working with the cattle. "Miss Grant," he greeted her, removing his hat. "How are you settling in?" "Well enough, thank you, Mr. Hunt," she replied, pinning one of Clara's aprons to the line. "Mrs. Thornhill keeps me busy." Nathan smiled. "That she does with all of us." He hesitated, then added, "I wanted to make sure you don't regret your decision, to stay, I mean." Penelope paused in her task, considering his question. "I don't regret choosing my own path, though I do miss my mother and younger sister." She hadn't allowed herself to dwell on thoughts of home, knowing it would only lead to tears. "Your father hasn't come looking for you," Nathan informed her. "I rode into town yesterday. Word is he's told everyone you've gone to Missouri as planned." "Saving face," Penelope said with a hint of bitterness. "Better to pretend I obeyed than admit I defied him. For what it's worth, I think you showed tremendous courage." Penelope looked at him directly. "It wasn't courage, Mr. Hunt. It was desperation, and your intervention." "Nathan," he said softly. "Please call me Nathan." A small smile touched her lips. "Then you must call me Penelope or Penny, as my family does." "Penelope," he repeated, as if testing the name. "It suits you better than Penny, I think. More dignified." From the porch, Clara's voice called out, "Penelope, I need help with supper." "Coming, Mrs. Thornhill," Penelope responded, then turned back to Nathan. "Duty calls." As she hurried toward the house, Nathan called after her, "Ride with me on Sunday after church. I'd like to show you something." Penelope hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." Sunday arrived clear and cool, a perfect late spring day in the mountains. Clara insisted that everyone on the ranch attend services in town, so Penelope found herself riding in the wagon beside the older woman, dreading the inevitable encounter with her family. "Hold your head high," Clara instructed as they approached Ouray. "You've done nothing to be ashamed of." The small church was already filled when they arrived. Penelope felt eyes turning toward her as she followed Clara to a pew, murmurs rippling through the congregation. Across the aisle, she spotted her parents and siblings, her father's face darkening at the sight of her. "Ignore them," Clara whispered, patting her hand. "Focus on the sermon." After the service ended, Penelope steeled herself as her mother approached, looking years older than she had a week ago. "Penelope," Elizabeth Grant said softly, her eyes drinking in the sight of her daughter. "Mother," Penelope replied, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Her mother glanced nervously toward where Joseph Grant stood rigidly by the door, then quickly pressed something into Penelope's hand. "Your sister misses you terribly." Without another word, she returned to her husband's side. Opening her hand, Penelope found a small brooch, a simple silver flower that had belonged to her grandmother. The message was clear. Her mother was reaching out in the only way she could. "Ready?" Nathan's voice beside her scattered her thoughts. He stood waiting in his Sunday best, hat in hand. Penelope nodded, slipping the brooch into her pocket. "Yes, let's go." They rode away from town, Nathan leading her along a trail that climbed steadily into the surrounding mountains. After an hour's journey, they emerged onto a plateau that offered a breathtaking view of the valley below, Ouray nestled amid the towering peaks like a jewel in a rugged setting. I discovered this place my first month working at Thornhill, Nathan explained as they dismounted. I come here when I need perspective. Penelope walked to the edge, marveling at the vista. It's magnificent. Like seeing the world through God's eyes, Nathan agreed, coming to stand beside her. Makes your troubles seem smaller somehow. They sat on a fallen log, sharing the lunch Clara had packed for them: bread, cheese, and dried apple slices. For a while they ate in comfortable silence, the majesty of the landscape making conversation seem unnecessary. Finally, Nathan spoke. I lost my parents in a flood back in Texas when I was 17. Had to make my own way after that. Drifted north, worked ranches in Kansas, Wyoming, before ending up here 3 years ago. Penelope listened, understanding he was sharing a part of himself few knew. I'm sorry about your parents. Nathan nodded. It shaped me, made me value freedom and choice more than most. That's really why I couldn't ride past when I saw what was happening to you. Everyone deserves the chance to choose their own path. Even when the path is uncertain, Penelope asked. Especially then, he replied with a smile. The uncertain paths often lead to the most beautiful destinations. As they talked, the hours slipped away. Nathan told her about his dreams of someday having his own ranch, while Penelope shared her love of books and secret hope of becoming a teacher. By the time they started back down the mountain, something had shifted between them, a foundation of friendship taking root beneath the unusual circumstances of their acquaintance. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Penelope's days were filled with work at the ranch, gradually earning Clara's approval and even occasional praise. On Sundays, after church, Nathan would take her riding, exploring the breathtaking wilderness surrounding Ouray. Her family maintained their distance, though her sister Catherine managed to slip her notes through a friend who worked at the general store. From these, Penelope learned that her father remained adamant she had gone to Missouri, maintaining the fiction even within their home. Only her mother and siblings knew the truth. As June bloomed into July, Penelope found herself watching for Nathan each evening, her heart lifting at the sight of him returning from the pastures. Their conversations grew longer, ranging from childhood memories to hopes for the future, discovering shared values and complementary differences. You're falling in love with him, Clara observed one evening as they prepared vegetables for the next day's stew. Penelope nearly cut her finger in surprise. Mrs. Thornhill, don't Mrs. Thornhill me, girl, I have eyes, Clara said, but her tone was gentle. And he's smitten with you too, has been since before he brought you here. We barely knew each other then, Penelope protested. Clara shrugged. Sometimes knowing happens faster than acquaintance. My William proposed 3 weeks after we met. We had 40 good years together. Penelope couldn't deny the truth in Clara's words. Something was growing between her and Nathan, something that made her pulse quicken when their hands accidentally touched and filled her thoughts during quiet moments. But the idyllic summer days were not to last. In late July, news reached the ranch that changed everything. Thomas Blackwell had been shot during an altercation in a neighboring town. Nathan brought the news, finding Penelope in the garden harvesting beans. Penelope, he said, his expression grave. I just heard in town. Thomas Blackwell was wounded in Montrose yesterday. They're saying it's serious. Penelope's hands stilled. Though she had recognized her feelings for Thomas weren't true love, he had been kind to her, and the thought of him injured stirred her compassion. How badly is he hurt? Shot in the shoulder. Doctor says he'll live, but he's asking for you. She looked up sharply. Me? How does he even know I'm still here? Nathan shrugged. Small towns have big ears. Word gets around. Penelope stood, brushing dirt from her apron. I should go to him. Are you sure? Nathan's voice held a note of concern, perhaps even jealousy. He was my friend, Nathan. Whatever else happened between us, I owe him that much. She touched his arm gently. It doesn't change anything between us. The next day, Nathan drove Penelope to Montrose in the ranch wagon. Thomas was recovering at the doctor's home, pale and weak but conscious. His eyes brightened when Penelope entered the room. "You didn't go to Missouri," he said, his voice thin with pain. "No," she confirmed, taking a seat beside his bed. "I stayed." Thomas managed a weak smile. "Good. I came looking for you, to apologize for not standing up to your father, for not being man enough to fight for us." Penelope felt a rush of sympathy. "Is that why you were in that fight?" He shook his head slightly. "No, that was just bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time. But I was in Montrose trying to earn enough to come back for you proper." "Oh, Thomas," she sighed. "I'm sorry for how everything happened." "Don't be," he replied, reaching for her hand with his good arm. "We were young, playing at love more than feeling it, I think." His perceptiveness surprised her. "Yes, I think perhaps we were." "The cowboy waiting outside," Thomas said, changing the subject. "He's the one who stopped your brother's wagon." "Yes, Nathan Hunt." Thomas studied her face. "You love him." It wasn't a question, and Penelope didn't deny it. "I do." "Good," Thomas said, closing his eyes briefly as pain washed over him. "I just wanted to know you were happy. That's all I needed to hear." Penelope stayed for an hour, talking quietly with Thomas about his plans to head to California once he recovered. When she finally rose to leave, he caught her hand one last time. "Be happy, Penelope Grant. That's all that matters in the end." Outside, Nathan was waiting patiently by the wagon. "Everything all right?" he asked as she approached. "Yes," she said, suddenly certain of her path forward. "Everything is perfect." As summer waned, the relationship between Penelope and Nathan deepened. Their Sunday rides became treasured rituals, opportunities to share thoughts and dreams away from the busy ranch. Nathan taught her to fish in the mountain streams, while Penelope introduced him to the poetry she loved, reading aloud as they sat beneath an aspen grove. In August, Clara took Penelope aside after breakfast. "Harvest festival's coming next month," she said without preamble. "Town will expect you to have made a decision by then." "A decision?" Penelope asked, though she understood Clara's meaning. "About Nathan. About your future." Clara folded her arms. "You can't stay in limbo forever, child. Either you're his intended or you need to make other arrangements." The directness was typical of Clara, but Penelope appreciated it. "I care deeply for Nathan, but he hasn't spoken of marriage." "Men sometimes need encouraging," Clara said with a knowing smile. "William circled around proposing for weeks, until I finally asked if he intended to speak up before winter came." That evening, Penelope walked to the corral where Nathan was checking a mare's injured leg. The sunset painted the mountains in hues of gold and purple, the air cooling as day surrendered to night. "Need some help?" she offered, leaning on the fence. Nathan smiled up at her. "Just finishing. She's healing nicely." He gave the mare a final pat and exited the corral, coming to stand beside Penelope. For a moment, they simply watched the sunset together, shoulders nearly touching. "Clara says the harvest festival is coming next month," Penelope finally said. Nathan nodded. "Always a big celebration. Dancing, food, everyone from miles around comes to town. She also said people will expect me to have made a decision by then." Penelope turned to face him directly. "About my future." Nathan's expression grew serious. "And have you made a decision?" "I think I made it the moment I took your hand and got down from that wagon," she admitted softly. "I just didn't know it yet." He took a step closer. "Penelope, I've been trying to find the right moment, the perfect words. He took her hands in his. "I never expected to find someone like you. Someone brave enough to choose her own path, kind enough to see good in everyone, strong enough to start over." "Nathan," she whispered, her heart racing. "I love you," he said simply. "I think I've loved you since I saw you teaching those Miller children with such patience after church last winter. I know it's fast, and maybe unconventional given how we came together, but—" Penelope pressed her fingers gently to his lips. "Sometimes knowing happens faster than acquaintance," she said, echoing Clara's words. "I love you too, Nathan Hunt." The joy that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Then marry me, Penelope Grant. Be my wife, my partner. Let's build something beautiful together." "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes." He kissed her then, tender and reverent as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky above the Thornhill Ranch. Word of their engagement spread quickly through Ouray and the surrounding areas. Most reactions were positive. The romantic tale of Nathan's roadside rescue had already become something of a local legend, embellished with each retelling. Clara was openly pleased, having grown fond of Penelope and long respected Nathan. "You'll stay on here after the wedding," she insisted. "This place is too big for just me, and Nathan knows the ranch operations better than anyone." One reaction remained uncertain: the Grants. Though Penelope had seen her family at church each Sunday, exchanges had been limited to distant nods from her mother and cold indifference from her father. "I need to tell them properly," Penelope told Nathan one evening in late August. "Face to face, before they hear it elsewhere." Nathan understood. "Do you want me to come with you?" She shook her head. "I think I need to do this alone." The next day, Penelope borrowed Clara's buggy and drove herself into Ouray, her stomach knotted with anxiety. The Grant General Store stood as it always had at the corner of Main and 3rd, its familiar sign swinging in the breeze. Taking a deep breath, Penelope entered the store. The bell above the door announced her arrival, drawing the attention of her father, who stood behind the counter. Joseph Grant's face hardened at the sight of his daughter. "What are you doing here?" he asked coldly. "I need to speak with you and Mother," Penelope replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "It's important." For a moment she thought he might refuse, but then he called toward the back room, "Elizabeth, come out here." Her mother appeared, gasping softly at the sight of Penelope. "Penny," she whispered, instinctively moving toward her daughter before her husband's stern glance stopped her. "Say what you came to say," Joseph demanded. Penelope stood tall, channeling the strength she'd discovered in herself over the summer. "I'm getting married. To Nathan Hunt. Next month after the Harvest Festival." Her father's expression didn't change. "The cowboy who interfered with family matters." "The man who offered me a choice," Penelope corrected. "A good, honorable man who loves me." "And you expect our blessing," Joseph scoffed. "No," Penelope said honestly, "but I would like it. For Mother's sake and for Catherine and the boys." She paused. "And for you, Father. Despite everything, you're still my family." Elizabeth Grant stepped forward, defying her husband's disapproving look. "I want to be at my daughter's wedding, Joseph. I've missed too much already." Joseph's jaw worked as he struggled with his pride. He's just a hired cowboy. "No property, no prospects." "He's foreman at Thornhill Ranch," Penelope countered. "Mrs. Thornhill has already told us we'll inherit the property someday. She has no one else since a leaner settled permanently in Denver." This new information caused Joseph to reassess, his merchant's mind calculating the value of the Thornhill property. "The entire ranch, in time, yes," Penelope confirmed. "But that's not why I'm marrying him. I love him, Father." Something in Joseph Grant seemed to deflate slightly. "Your mother can attend the wedding. And your siblings. I'll—" Consider it. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Penelope knew her practical father would eventually reconcile himself to her advantageous match, even if he couldn't yet admit his original judgment had been wrong. "Thank you," she said simply. "The ceremony will be at the church on the last Saturday in September." As she turned to leave, her mother rushed forward, embracing her tightly. "I'm so happy for you, my dear," Elizabeth whispered, "and so proud of your courage." Tears pricked at Penelope's eyes as she returned the embrace. "I miss you, Mother. Come for tea next week," Elizabeth suggested, glancing toward her husband, who gave a curt nod of approval. "Bring your young man." The gesture was small, but significant, a bridge beginning to form across the chasm that had separated Penelope from her family. As September unfurled its golden beauty across the mountains, preparations for both the harvest festival and the wedding occupied every spare moment. Clara insisted on ordering fabric from Denver for Penelope's wedding dress, while Nathan worked with the ranch hands to build additions to the living quarters they would occupy after the marriage. "Nothing fancy," Nathan had said, showing Penelope the plans, "but it will be ours." A week before the festival, Nathan rode into town alone and made his way to the Grant store. Joseph looked up from his ledger, surprise evident on his face. "Mr. Hunt," he acknowledged stiffly. "What brings you here?" Nathan removed his hat, standing respectfully before the older man. "I've come to speak with you about Penelope, sir. She's already agreed to marry you, hasn't she? What more is there to discuss?" Joseph's tone was brusque, but lacked the open hostility of previous encounters. "I know I went about things all wrong," Nathan said frankly. "A man should speak to a woman's father before proposing. I robbed you of that respect, and for that I apologize." Joseph studied him for a long moment. "You stole my daughter away." "No, sir," Nathan countered gently. "I offered her a choice when you gave her none. There's a difference." The blunt truth hung in the air between them. Finally, Joseph sighed. "She was always the headstrong one, like her grandmother." "She's remarkable," Nathan agreed. "Strong, kind, intelligent. I promise you, Mr. Grant, I'll spend my life making sure she never regrets her choice." A ghost of a smile touched Joseph's lips. "She'd have your hide if she heard you making promises about her to me." "Probably," Nathan admitted with a smile of his own, "but I'm making them anyway." Joseph came around the counter, extending his hand. "You take care of my girl, Hunt." "That's all I ask." Nathan shook his hand firmly. "With everything I have, sir." "I'll be at the wedding," Joseph said gruffly. "Someone has to give the bride away." The harvest festival transformed Ouray into a celebration of bounty and community. Stalls lined Main Street, offering everything from fresh produce to handcrafted goods. Music and laughter filled the air as townsfolk and ranchers alike gathered to mark the changing season. Penelope and Nathan walked hand in hand through the festivities, stopping to greet friends and accept good wishes for their upcoming wedding. Even Thomas Blackwell, recovered from his wound and passing through on his way west, offered sincere congratulations. As evening fell, lanterns were lit and a space cleared for dancing. Nathan led Penelope onto the makeshift dance floor, pulling her close as the fiddles struck up a waltz. "Happy?" he asked, his eyes reflecting the lantern light. "Completely," she answered, resting her head on his shoulder as they turned in time to the music. From the edge of the dancing area, Joseph and Elizabeth Grant watched their daughter. "She does look happy," Joseph admitted reluctantly. Elizabeth squeezed her husband's arm. "Yes, dear, she does." The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, the aspen trees in full golden glory against the deep blue September sky. The small church in Ouray was filled to capacity, fragrant with wildflowers gathered by Catherine and her friends. In a room at the back of the church, Elizabeth helped her daughter with the final touches of her wedding ensemble, a gown of ivory satin with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. "Something borrowed," Elizabeth said, fastening a pearl necklace around Penelope's throat. "My mother wore these at her wedding." Catherine presented her with a blue ribbon to tie around her bouquet of late-blooming mountain flowers. "For luck and happiness," she explained, hugging her sister tightly. There was a knock at the door, and Joseph entered, stopping short at the sight of his daughter in her bridal finery. "Penelope," he breathed, momentarily at a loss for words. "How do I look, father?" she asked, turning slowly. "Like your grandmother," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Just as beautiful, just as stubborn." Penelope laughed, the tension of the past months finally dissipating entirely. "High praise indeed." Joseph offered his arm. "Your young man is waiting, shall we?" The ceremony was simple but profound. The traditional vows exchanged with clear voices and unwavering conviction. Nathan's eyes never left Penelope's face as he promised to love and cherish her all the days of his life. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was both a culmination and a beginning, the sealing of a bond that had formed in the most unexpected of circumstances. The celebration afterward at the Thornhill Ranch lasted well into the night, with food and dancing and toasts to the happy couple. Even Joseph Grant raised his glass, officially welcoming Nathan into the family with a gruff but sincere speech that brought tears to Elizabeth's eyes. As the last guests departed, Nathan led his bride toward their newly expanded quarters at the east wing of the ranch house. The rooms had been transformed with fresh paint and new curtains, a wedding gift from Clara, who had insisted on giving you young people some privacy. "Welcome home, Mrs. Hunt," Nathan said, lifting Penelope across the threshold. She laughed, arms around his neck. "That sounds so strange. I'm not sure I'll ever get used to it." "We have a lifetime for you to practice," he murmured, setting her gently on her feet but keeping her within the circle of his arms. Penelope reached up to touch his face. "A lifetime that began the moment you stopped that wagon and said those words. 'Stay here with me,'" he recalled softly. "Best words I ever spoke. And the wisest choice I ever made," she whispered before his lips found hers in the privacy of their new home. The years that followed brought changes, both expected and surprising, to the lives of Nathan and Penelope Hunt. Clara Thornhill gradually stepped back from the daily management of the ranch, entrusting more responsibilities to Nathan while maintaining her position as the property's matriarch. Penelope flourished in her new role, balancing ranch duties with her passion for education. By the spring following their wedding, she had established a small school in one of the outbuildings, teaching not only the children from neighboring ranches, but also several of the younger ranch hands who had never had formal education. "You've created something special here," Clara observed one afternoon, watching Penelope lead her students through a geography lesson. "This ranch was always about cattle. Now it's about growing people too." Penelope smiled, touched by Clara's approval. "Everyone deserves a chance to learn, to choose their path." The reconciliation with the Grant family continued to strengthen, especially after the birth of Nathan and Penelope's first child in the autumn of 1880. William Joseph Hunt, named for both Clara's late husband and Penelope's father, became the center of attention in both households. "He has the Hunt eyes," Nathan would say proudly, while Joseph Grant insisted the baby had the Grant chin, strong and determined. The young family's happiness was tempered only briefly when Clara fell ill during the harsh winter of 1881. For weeks, Penelope barely left the older woman's bedside, nursing her through pneumonia with the same determination she brought to all aspects of her life. "You're as much a daughter to me as a leaner," Clara confessed during her recovery. More present, certainly. By spring, Clara had regained her strength and was once again directing ranch operations from her rocking chair on the porch, though now with William toddling at her feet, demanding stories and attention from his Grandma Clara. In 1882, the railroad finally reached Ouray, connecting the mountain town more directly to Denver and beyond. The change brought new opportunities and challenges as the mining industry expanded and the cattle business faced increased competition. "We need to diversify," Nathan told Penelope one evening as they reviewed the ranch's finances. "The railroad brings opportunity, but also risk." Together, they developed plans to add sheep to their livestock and to expand the vegetable gardens into a market operation supplying the growing town and mining camps. Nathan's practical knowledge, combined with Penelope's head for figures, created a partnership that strengthened both their marriage and the ranch's prospects. Their family grew again in the spring of 1883 with the birth of a daughter, Clara Elizabeth, a tiny girl with her mother's determined spirit evident from her first cry. "Another strong-willed woman in the family," Nathan joked, cradling his newborn daughter. "Heaven help us all." Penelope laughed, exhausted but radiant. "The world needs strong women. Look at all Clara has accomplished." "And you," Nathan added softly, "the girl brave enough to choose her own destiny that dawn outside Ouray." The mention of that pivotal morning still stirred powerful emotions. "I sometimes wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come along that road," Penelope admitted. Nathan sat carefully on the edge of the bed, balancing their daughter in one arm while reaching for Penelope's hand with the other. "I believe we would have found each other eventually. Some things are meant to be." In the summer of 1885, Clara Thornhill officially signed over half ownership of the ranch to Nathan and Penelope, with the understanding that the remainder would come to them upon her passing. "No sense waiting until I'm dead to see you enjoy the fruits of your labor," she declared pragmatically. The gesture allowed the Hunts to expand their operations further, adding a small apple orchard that Penelope was particularly proud of. "Think of the pies we'll make in a few years," she told William, now a curious 5-year-old who followed his father everywhere. Life settled into a rhythm marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Each passing year deepened the bond between Nathan and Penelope, their initial attraction maturing into a partnership built on mutual respect, shared goals, and abiding love. They faced challenges together: harsh winters, cattle disease, the economic uncertainties that always accompanied frontier life. When a fire threatened the North Pasture in 1887, the entire ranch community worked through the night to contain it, with Penelope organizing water brigades while Nathan led the men in creating fire breaks. "We make a good team, Mrs. Hunt," Nathan said afterward, his face smoke-smeared and exhausted. "The best, Mr. Hunt," she agreed, passing him a cup of much-needed coffee. Their family expanded once more in 1888 with the arrival of twin boys, James and Thomas, completing what Nathan called their perfect herd. Clara, now in her 60s but still sharp as ever, doted on all 4 children. "Never thought I'd see this old place filled with young ones," she admitted to Penelope one evening as they watched the children playing in the yard. "Makes all the struggles worthwhile." By 1890, the Thornhill Hunt Ranch, as it had come to be known, was one of the most successful operations in the region. Nathan's innovative ranching methods, combined with Penelope's school, now a proper building with 2 hired teachers in addition to Penelope herself, had created a reputation that spread beyond Ouray. When a magazine writer from Denver arrived to document progressive ranching techniques in the San Juans, He was clearly surprised to find a woman so integral to the business. Mrs. Hunt not only manages our accounts and correspondence, Nathan explained, but her educational program for both children and adults has given us the most skilled workforce in the county. The resulting article praised the remarkable partnership of Nathan and Penelope Hunt, highlighting their complementary strengths and shared vision. "They've made you famous," Joseph Grant teased his daughter during a Sunday dinner at the ranch. Now in his 70s, Joseph had mellowed considerably, taking genuine pride in Penelope's achievements. "Hardly famous, father," Penelope demurred. "Just trying to build something meaningful." "And you have," Elizabeth added, watching her grandchildren with contentment. "Something very meaningful indeed." In the spring of 1893, Clara Thornhill passed peacefully in her sleep after a brief illness. The loss hit the entire ranch community hard, but especially Penelope, who had grown to love the older woman as a second mother. "She saw something in us," Penelope said at the funeral, her voice steady despite her grief. "In both of us, before we fully saw it in ourselves." The full ownership of the ranch now transferred to Nathan and Penelope, a responsibility they accepted with both gratitude and solemnity. "We'll honor her legacy," Nathan promised as they stood beside Clara's grave in the small cemetery overlooking the valley. As the 19th century drew to a close, the Hunts found themselves at the center of a thriving community. Their children were growing, William preparing for college in Denver, Clara Elizabeth showing talent as both an artist and horsewoman, and the twins keeping everyone on their toes with their boundless energy and curiosity. In 1898, on the 20th anniversary of the day, Nathan had stopped the wagon on the road outside Ouray. He surprised Penelope with a special gift, a silver locket containing a small painting of the mountain view from their plateau. "20 years ago today, I said 3 words that changed both our lives," Nathan reminisced as they sat on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the mountains with familiar glory. "Stay here with me," Penelope recited, the words still powerful after all these years. "I can still see you standing there, hand outstretched, so certain," Nathan laughed. "I wasn't certain at all, I was terrified you'd refuse." "Really?" Penelope turned to him in surprise. "You seemed so confident on the outside, perhaps." "Inside, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs." He took her hand, the gesture as natural as breathing after 2 decades together. "Best gamble I ever took." Penelope leaned against his shoulder, content in the life they had built together. "Not a gamble, a choice. The right one." As night fell over the valley, stars appearing one by one in the vast Colorado sky, Nathan and Penelope Hunt remained on their porch, hands intertwined, surrounded by the legacy of love and determination that had begun with a brave decision at dawn, 20 years before. In the distance, their children's laughter echoed from the main house, the next generation of a family forged not by obligation or arrangement, but by the courage to choose one's own path and the wisdom to recognize love when it appeared, unexpectedly, on a mountain road at dawn.